Welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon. Thank you for joining me tonight. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American. It's always good to be back here with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Well, tonight I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an update to the situation in Iran, directly and indirectly. I've decided a number of days ago that I would not be providing a play-by-play of this unfolding situation. Part of the reason for that, aside from personal logistics circumstances, is the fact that, frankly, when you are in a state of war, when you're in a state of conflict, there's a lot of disinformation, and when you begin to try to go through it, it becomes nearly impossible in the moment to discern things. And so it's important, I think, to not have a knee-jerk reaction to every single event. Now, there is something that I want to talk about at the start of the show tonight, and that has to do with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In recent days, there's been a widely circulating rumor about his whereabouts, his well-being, and things of that nature. And what I find interesting is not so much the allegation itself, but rather sort of the form that it's taking, basically. What I want to do first is kind of go through this and kind of make an educated guess as to whether this is true or not. And now I'll just be straight with you. The allegation is that Netanyahu has actually been, something's happened to him, whether he was assassinated or if something else happened to him. Now, I will just tell you at the outset, I try to go into this with as little bias as possible, but to be frank with you, I don't think it holds enough merit to say that this is likely. Now, with that said, this is one of the pictures making the rounds on the internet, and apparently people are pointing this out. And I'll just zoom in real quick. And it's not the highest quality picture, I acknowledge that, but some people are claiming that he has 6 fingers here. Now, this video, this screenshot comes from basically a speech that Netanyahu was giving in the days following the initial onset of the rumors that something had happened to Netanyahu, such as an assassination or something to that effect. Now, I just look at this, and on its face, I don't think it holds any merit here in this picture, because I can clearly tell that there's only 5 fingers. Now, I'm not saying that to say that we shouldn't question things that are put out there, and I'm going to come back to this in a little bit, but when you're talking about irregular warfare, there's counterinsurgencies and there's information disinformation. And I think that a lot of people right now are being swept up into this vortex of intentional disinformation in order to discredit people that otherwise are more of the discerning type, shall we say. Now, what I want to go to next is a clip from, I believe this is Sky News. Now, anytime I show clips from, the mainstream media, I have to be a little cautious for copyright's sake, but hopefully this will be okay to share, because this is not a straight off the air, so to speak, type of recording. This is rather a clip. And this is the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. And in this clip, he was sitting down for an interview with this TV presenter or reporter when he was suddenly called out, I guess it was, to the White House Situation Room. And I'm just going to play this through and let you see for yourself what transpired here.
I listened to you on the...
The president wants you. Sorry, the president wants you right away.
Oh, okay. Okay. No problem at all. See you shortly, Mr. Secretary.
You can work that in.
Mr. Secretary, I have to say, it's a first, I'm sure a last as well, that an interviewee's been pulled away to go to the Situation Room. How was the president? Was he stressed?
No, the president is in great spirits. The Iranian mission is proceeding well ahead of schedule, and I have to tell you, Wolf, that I've a teenager who's considering military service, And I could give this team my highest compliment, from President Trump to the head of the Joint Chiefs to the Secretary of War. I would say that I would trust my child's life in their hands.
Okay, so let me come back up on screen here. But basically, that was from Sky News, and what that was basically U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent having to abruptly leave pretty much right as they were just about to start the interview, or starting the interview, and he has to suddenly bail to go to the Situation Room, whether literally or figuratively, at the White House for some situation. Now, some have alleged that this might have been, if something happened to Netanyahu, that this is when this occurred, and being a senior Trump administration official, obviously he would be in on an emergency all hands on deck type of meeting. Now, here's why I'm skeptical about that being somehow circumstantial evidence somehow to something going on with respect to Netanyahu. The reason why I'm skeptical is because, one, having done TV, done this kind of stuff myself, there's a number of explanations as to why he might be appearing this way. One of which, and this is true for me, when I've had a meal, for example, and let's say he may have had a quick meal before he came back to do the rest of the interview, because apparently it was well over an hour. You can get, sometimes you can get a little jittery for a little bit after you have a meal. Same thing if you're having to make a high stakes, decision, or, you're having talked for a long time with people in that other place before coming back to the interview. There's a number of explanations, so I would be cautious to assume that the reason why Scott Bessent clearly, appearing to be either jittery, if not a little unnerved, I would be skeptical to tie that somehow back to something happening with Netanyahu. And I'm saying this I'm not saying out of hand I'm rejecting the possibility that something happened to Netanyahu. What I'm saying is that we got to be cautious before we latch on to things, because sometimes they, certain individuals will put out disinformation to counter, those that are trying to, discern things in the mainstream media, because now that a lot more people are awake and they don't trust the mainstream Mockingbird media, I do believe that the deep state, one of their tactics is they're going to try to insert things that don't really happen, that haven't really happened. So we have to be very cautious to, yes, be discerning, but at the same time not immediately latch on to any and every thing that emerges. Now, having said all that, there is this clip that I'm going to share from X, formerly Twitter. There is a journalist by the name of Ben Swann. Many of y'all probably have heard of that name at least. And he used to be on a major, let's say a TV station in Atlanta. And he used to be an evening news anchor there. And he kind of rose to prominence because he was the one that he helped to bring Pizzagate into the mainstream, if you will, back in those days. Now, Ben Swann put up this clip where he talks about Netanyahu, and he seems to take the view that some of the proof of life clips of Netanyahu are AI potentially. So I'm going to just present this. You are free to make your own decision. I'm just going to present it. But this is what Ben Swann has to say concerning the recent clips purported to be by Netanyahu.
Well, there is now a new video proving that Benjamin Netanyahu is not dead, except it's fake. Hold on, it really is. But there are two issues here. There's the technical side, because this sloppily made video is clearly AI once again. And then there's the context side, because if the video were real, and it's not, it makes zero sense. Let's talk about it here, because the clip released on Sunday shows that the Prime Minister is in perfect health. There he is, standing in what looks like a roadside cafe, joking with the camera. At one point, he even raises his hands and counts his fingers. Haha, he only has 5, not 6 fingers like he did in the last AI video. It's also hilarious. The problem with this video, though, is that it's also clearly AI. This isn't just AI. It's sloppy AI. First of all, notice the cup of coffee here. It's filled to the point of overflowing. But then Netanyahu picks up the cup. Nothing spills, despite the coffee sloshing around inside. Then when he takes a drink, there's no visible change in the level of the drink. No spill, no ripple. Later, he reaches down to put his hand in his pocket. And the pocket, you see there, it magically jumps over to cover his hand. Never seen a pocket do that in real life. Then today, a second video surfaced. This one supposedly shows Netanyahu hiking in the hills outside of Jerusalem. Except this video is also AI. But if you watch this particular video, watch here, you see Bibi is walking over to put his hand on the back of a chair. Except he has a ring on his finger when his hand starts to move, and then magically that ring disappears as he reaches for the chair. And then, once his hand gets there, poof, the ring is back. So, both of these videos have elements that are telltale signs of AI-generated videos. What about the context? Step back and look at the bigger picture. Right now, President Donald Trump is traveling internationally, meeting with allies, attempting to manage the fallout from a war that is rapidly expanding. See, the president is calling on NATO to get involved in this war and securing the Strait of Hormuz. But Netanyahu, he isn't doing any of that. In fact, in the last week, he has met with no one, not one world leader. And it's not just meetings. Netanyahu has not held a live press conference in days. He was not present at the country's security meeting on Saturday, and he missed the war meeting today. Absent from both in the middle of a massive war in which his country is struck by missile attack daily. But he really needs a cup of coffee and a photo op at an observation deck. This is ridiculous. There have been no major televised addresses, no interviews, just short videos posted online.
So that was from Ben Swan, formerly a TV news anchor. He's now kind of doing his own thing at this point. And I would say that the coffee video is a little more credible than the clip showing his ring finger. And the reason I say that is I literally went to school, went to college for broadcasting and video work type of stuff. And basically, when you're recording a video, including what you're seeing here, you're not seeing, if you're not really into the know about technical stuff, let me just be very, 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 very basic on explaining this. So, case in point, the term motion pictures. That's quite literally what you see when you watch a video. Like this camera that you see. I believe this camera can record 60 frames a second. Now, you may not be getting it at 60 frames if it's compressed at some point, and all of that. But basically, the point of me saying that is to say when you have frames and you kind of go frame by frame by frame, if a motion is moving fast enough, it has a tendency to blend with one frame into another. So honestly, when I look at that, I see more of the ring finger, not proof of AI, but more proof of, the hand moving, right? And basically moving fast enough to where it can't really capture in crisp detail the actual ring as it goes frame into the next frame sort of thing. So all that to say then, and that is to basically be cautious on when you see allegations out there, when you see rumors spreading about things happening, you've got to be very, very careful, especially nowadays, ironically, in the day of AI. I mean, could this be AI stuff? I don't know. I'm just saying you've got to be discerning and not assume that it's all one and all one versus all the other type of stuff. And we got to also remember the deep state, as I said earlier, and I've said time and time before, I believe, they are going to put intentional disinformation out there in order to discredit people that are trying to report the truth. So it's very important to be very cautious as to all of that. Now, I just want to briefly mention something that I think ties a little bit into this, and that is the Department, well, it's now, of course, at least practically speaking, Department of War. And but basically they talk about operations of warfare, how you have conventional warfare and then you also have irregular warfare. Irregular warfare, among other things, can take the form of information warfare or disinformation. And and basically there is an overt acknowledgement by the then the Department of Defense, now Department of War, that, and I'll just go ahead and put it up on screen even though it's very technical here, but they define, and I'm just going to read this if you don't mind, but basically asymmetric activities, and they define it this way: activities that target an opponent or support an ally or partner when a gross disparity in relative comprehensive power causes the weaker party to resort to irregular methodologies, e.g. disinformation, terrorism, insurgency, resistance to occupation, to erode or exhaust their opponent's power, influence, and will. However, a stronger party may target opponents asymmetrically when the risks and costs associated with a direct symmetric approach are unacceptable. So basically, let me just kind of rephrase what that was saying there. So basically, when you're in a weaker position in warfare, that party in war may resort to things such as disinformation when they can't really achieve their goals through conventional means. However, it's also true that a stronger party to a war, to a conflict, may resort to asymmetric activities such as disinformation and other activities when it is expedient to do so, basically. When in their view it's unacceptable to go the conventional warfare route. What does this mean in the context of what I'm talking about here? The deep state is not, in my opinion, in the position of strength right now. So they are resorting in ways that have never been seen before to irregular warfare, i.e., disinformation. I'm not saying with 100% certainty that what's happened with Netanyahu is a fake, disinformation story. However, we need to be very cautious and be skeptical that there might be an ongoing attempt by the deep state to get people latched onto this, and then they could say, see here, these people that are not in the mainstream media, they're just, crazy buffoons, spreading fake information out there. So very important then to just take what you see with a grain of salt. I remember when I was in middle school, and this is obviously before AI was even a thing, but I believe it was around 2008, 2009, somewhere in that time frame. I remember someone saying, and the phrase is well known, but basically believe nothing of what you hear and only half of what you see. And I think that probably is some good advice there in the context of what we're talking about. Now, what I want to do, where I want to go with this episode now, is kind of talk a little bit more about the NATO aspect to all of this, because I think when it comes to Trump and sort of what he's trying to achieve here with Iran, I think that what the NATO, the person running, or the sort of the chief of NATO, the secretary of NATO, whatever the title is, I think he just kind of said it, exactly as it is regarding what Trump is trying to achieve here over in Iran. So let me just play the clip for you, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory here, because it kind of obliterates the narrative a little bit, dare I say, about his intentions concerning the war in Iran versus what it actually is.
So when President Trump is doing good stuff, I will praise him. And I don't mind him publishing text messages. And if anyone thinks here, again, that the European Union or Europe as a whole can defend itself without the US, keep on dreaming. You can't. We can't. We need each other. And why do we need each other? I tell you. First of all, because also the US needs NATO. And the US is not only in NATO to prevent a mistake after the First World War, not to re-engage with Europe. And then again, the long arm of history reaching out to the US again in the Second World War, as Churchill famously said in his speech in 1941 in the US Congress. They are also in NATO because for the US to stay safe, and by the way, Arctic region is evidence here, they need a secure Arctic, they need a secure Euro-Atlantic, and they also need a secure Europe. So the US has every interest in NATO as much as Canada and the European NATO allies. But for Europe, if you really want to go it alone, and those of you who are planning for that, forget that you can ever get there with 5%. It will be 10%. You have to build up your own nuclear capability. That costs billions and billions of euros. You will lose then, in that scenario, you would lose the ultimate guarantor of our freedom, which is the US nuclear umbrella. Good luck.
Yeah, I think that that's pretty well said on that front. Now, I do think there's more to this war in Iran, and I'm going to get into that in a second. But basically, this whole narrative that's being perpetuated that Trump is doing this at the behest of Israel and all of that stuff, frankly, honestly, in all objectivity and all discernment, I don't think that holds much, if any, water, because basically, and let me just kind of segue here into what I really want to talk about, and sort of reiterate what I've said before. Iran is not Iran, if you will. What it is basically a regime that's been in place for 47 years. And let's talk about the history of this a little bit, actually, because this is important to understand exactly what we have now. So in 1953, there was a coup d'etat in Iran. And basically what took place then was you basically had the prime minister of the time in Iran, Mohammad Mozdega, and you had on the other side, apparently, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the then Shah of Iran, with the backing of Western forces, basically overthrew Prime Minister Mozdega. Now, why is that? Why was there an overthrow that involved, basically the Western powers? Basically, what happened was, it was to protect, and I'm going to word this delicately here. You can go read this for yourself in all of its explicit detail. But basically, it was to protect Western interests with respect to the oil interests in Iran. Basically, there was a desire to nationalize the oil resources in Iran. The Western powers said no to that, and so they overthrew the head of government, which, in other countries, sometimes that is different from head of state. So the head of government, Prime Minister Mozdega, was overthrown and replaced by someone appointed directly by the Shah of the time. And basically, and I'm skipping over a lot of details here, you had the Shah with the Western backing basically doing this. And then, so that's why I've kind of alluded to the Shah before his overthrow. He was kind of a friendly, I wouldn't say a puppet. I don't think that that's the right word for it. It's more like he was willing to go along and play along with the Western powers. But now, in 1979, the overthrow of the Shah brought about what we have today, the Islamic Republic in Iran, and that too is even more of a deep state asset. And that deep state, basically, the deep state does not have a flag. It does not have a country, so to speak. The deep state is far and it's wide. It is transnational, international, global. It is like the, if you will, strictly speaking, the New World Order, and it is the spirit of Antichrist. And basically, it's important to remember that the regime that's in place now was basically put there by the deep state because they can be controlled. And, of course, not to be confused, of course, with what came before it, the Shah and all of that. But the history of it being that suddenly in 1979 we had an overthrow and we went over, basically Iran became this, this dare I say, terrorist organization running the country. That's kind of oversimplifying history. Now, I am skipping over a lot of details. I'm sure I'm missing other details, but basically the takeaway here is that Iran, so to speak, in quotations, is the deep state its aspect in Iran. So it's very important to remember we're not overthrowing a truly, if you will, sovereign entity in another country, if you will. And I think it's important to also say this, that for those that are saying this is regime change and all that stuff, well, it kind of is, but you have to also remember the fact that our deep state, and I'm saying our, it's not just the U.S. deep state, because the U.S. or the deep state is global, okay, and it controls most countries in the world to one degree or another. And basically, the deep state put this regime in. And now, and it's just like when a snake bites you, for example, you don't just look at it and say, oh, I shouldn't intervene, I'm just going to let it heal on its own. No, you have to use an antidote. You have to go to the emergency room and they inject you or whatever with this antidote that brilliant minds, brilliant doctors, created an antidote that can counteract that poison. So that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing the overthrow of the deep state, as it were, in Iran. Now, I would also just say in passing that Kim Clement, his prophetic, prophetic words that were given by or through Kim Clement, make clear that the deliverance of the Iranian people from the regime there is truly an act of God. So we need to be, I want to be careful by saying it's not just Trump, it's not just this country, that country, it is a spiritual war, supremely so, than it is even a physical war. So I just wanted to say that and not forget to mention that. Now, what I want to say next is basically we can see very clearly who the enemy really truly is, the enemy of the people. And we can see now that the Iran foreign minister, the Iranian regime foreign minister, if you can believe this, if you haven't seen on X and other places already, he was actually appearing on, I'm not even joking, on mainstream Mockingbird media outlets. Really think about this for a second. With all the criticism that we're hearing on CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, all of them, and how they're saying that Trump, he's just trying to start a war, he's trying to distract from the Epstein files, and all of these ridiculous, nonsensical things that they're saying. They say all of that. Think about this. They're saying all of that while they then interview the very regime that, in my view, is a terrorist organization. Let me put this up on screen. You don't have to take my word for it. And I just want you to, I'm just going to play the first few seconds of this due to copyright. I'm not going to play much of it, but I just want you to listen to the overall demeanor of the interview, how it progresses and all that type of stuff.
Foreign Minister Arakshi, thank you so much for your time this morning, sir. I wanted to start with the news overnight that the U.S. has carried out a military strike on Harg Island. The President of the United States said that for reasons of decency, I have chosen not to wipe out all the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. Let me start by asking you about what has happened on Harg Island and what is Iran's response to these strikes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think our armed forces have already answered that they would retaliate if our oil and energy infrastructure are attacked. And they will attack any energy infrastructure in the region which belongs to an American company or an American company is a shareholder. So the reaction would be clear. Last night, they have attacked Hark Island and Abu Musa Island with, the artillery rocket system, HIMARS, as they call it. which is a low-range rockets, and they have done it from the soil of our neighbors. And this is crystal clear that now they are using the territory of our neighbors to attack us by these kind of, rockets. And this is absolutely
Which
unacceptable.
neighbors, sir?
Well, the last night attacks were tracked by our forces, and now it is clear that they are fired from UAE, from 2 locations in the UAE, from in Ras Al Khaimah, and from a location.
Okay, due to copyright concerns, I'm going to stop it there, but you get the idea. And the thing that just really blows my mind, and that is, you're taught in television that it's like dead air, dead silence is like an eternity. And the fact that this interviewer allows the Iranian foreign minister to speak without any pushback for as long as you heard that. I mean, I get it. You give the person enough time to respond, but basically it was turning increasingly into more of a speech before the follow-up. And you can see very clearly the enemy is now showing its true, or I should say the media, it is the enemy, is showing its true colors. Now, I got another example to show you. This is from CBS Face the Nation, and just take a listen to how the introduction goes. This is absolutely insane how this goes down.
We turn now to the Foreign Minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi. Good evening to you, sir.
Well, good evening to you. Thank you for having me for the second time.
Yes, and they are extraordinary times. Minister, President Trump said this weekend he is not ready to make a deal with Iran because the terms aren't good enough yet. His administration is saying this war could last another 3.5 weeks or so. Has Iran asked for a ceasefire?
No, we never asked for a ceasefire, and we have never asked even for negotiation. We are ready to defend ourselves as long as it takes, and this is what we have done so far, and we continue to do that until President.
Well, you get the idea, I think. But basically, it's like a friendly, sit down by the fireplace. It's almost as much of a soft piece as it were if it were almost like back in the days of Oprah Winfrey doing an interview, or one of those shows, it's like those daytime shows, and they sit down and it's not meant to be confrontational. It's more like interviewing about a new book or something. I mean, this reads to me like literally almost like this guy wrote a new book and they just want to get him to explain a little bit about it. That's the kind of tone that I'm getting from this, not a holding someone to account type of interview, which was what good actual journalism would dictate. Now, there is one soundbite in that same interview on the CBS Face the Nation I want to play for you because I think this says it all right here. And let me just play it for you. And this is absolutely crazy.
President Trump said this weekend he is not ready to make a deal with Iran because the terms aren't good enough yet. His administration is saying this war could last another 3.5 weeks or so. Has Iran asked for a ceasefire?
No, we never asked for a ceasefire, and we have never asked even for negotiation. We are ready to defend ourselves as long as it takes, and this is what we have done so far, and we continue to do that until President Trump comes to the point that this is an illegal war with no victory, and there are people being killed only because President Trump wants to have fun. This is what he has said.
Have fun?
We are not. Yes, this is what he said, that they are sinking, ships and targeting different places because it is fun. And the Secretary of War has said that there is no mercy. Mm-hmm. And this is actually a war crime. Even saying that is a war crime. So this is a war. This is a war of choice by.
So, that's like an expansion on the introduction that I showed you a moment ago. But basically, this guy is being allowed to say all of this. And if you notice, the Margaret Brennan, the host, was just allowing him. I mean, she kind of responded in shock at what he said, but she just kind of let him talk. Now, there is, if you will, what's the word? A healthy dose of allowing someone to speak. But basically, if you look at this and you really think about this, the mainstream media is the mouthpiece. They're not the mouthpiece for the Trump administration. They're not the and they shouldn't be a mouthpiece for any administration, I should say. But they're not, for example, standing on American side, as it were. And they're not even being impartial about it. They are literally the mouthpiece of the deep state. They are literally that. And you can see very clearly because the regime there is the deep state in Iran. Deep state controls Iran, and they are, because the mainstream Mockingbird media is the mouthpiece of the deep state operation, Mockingbird, hint, hint. They are allowing, basically deep state allows the deep state to speak, if you really want to break it down that way. So you can see very clearly now the media, this is their true colors. And someone wrote on X, why the HE double hockey sticks is this lunatic getting airtime? Unbelievable at CBS News. Someone else replied, because CBS is run by lunatics. There you go. And I would say, given what I just saw there, it would be hard to make an argument against that. Now, this commentator. Actually, before I get to that, there's one more clip I want to not play, but just put up on screen so you can see it. But basically, this is from Rapid Response 47 on X. And basically what happened was CNN took a clip from Iranian state television, basically ran it for, it was almost like a not a live simulcast, but they played it for 4 minutes. 4 minutes of uninterrupted Iranian state television run by the same psychotic and murderous regime that has prided itself on brutally slaughtering Americans for 47 years. So basically, you can see very clearly now the media is not working in the interests of the American people. And so when you hear, for example, now I don't have the material in front of me, but I'll just say from what I heard and what I've seen, the FCC commissioner, FCC is Federal Communications Commission. They kind of regulate, TV, radio, and such, and they issue licenses for TV and radio stations. They're now threatening, basically, look, if you spread disinformation about Iran, we may not renew your licenses as they come up for renewal. And the media is crying foul, saying this is a violation of freedom of speech. Well, if you look at this, they're literally giving a voice to Iran, a terrorist organization. The mainstream Mockingbird media is quite literally and figuratively the mouthpiece for the deep state and for the Iranian regime, of which it is not a government of the people of Iran. It is a regime put in place by the deep state. It's very apparent, very obvious what is happening here. And then there is this clip that I'll now get to involving a commentator on CNN. And she kind of said the quiet part out loud concerning the media's intentions concerning all of this. Just take a listen.
As you said, many administrations are unhappy with headlines. I find it interesting, though, that I've seen among Democratic politicians and many in the media, they seem to almost be rooting for America to fail because they don't like Trump. And if you look at some of these headlines, they're kind of wild. U.S. capability showing signs of rot. Iran regime doing well, in control. The U.S. has no strategy.
What outlets are you quoting?
U.S. has no strategy. The Atlantic, as you said, many administrations.
Clip gets cut off there, but basically she cites the Atlantic and things like that. And of course, the Atlantic is a leftist outlet. There's no question about that. And, of course, and you can see the demeanor on the other people there at the round table. They're like, they just out of hand reject that, even though and I've just literally played this for you. There's clear evidence to show the media is on the side of Iran. And that should tell you everything you need to know concerning all this. Now, I understand the need to be impartial and the need to not take sides, but it's very obvious when you look at this that the media is on the side of a terrorist organization, and the fact that they are speaks to the desperation of the deep state at this point. They are panicking like there's no tomorrow, that this has now reached a level that they can no longer even hide which side they truly are on, and it's not on the side of America. And for that matter, may I also say, it's not on the side of the Iranian people. Like I said earlier, this regime is not of the people of Iran. It is instituted by the deep state. It really and truly is. And it's very obvious at this point that that is what we're seeing here. So, and I've mentioned earlier the prophetic, there was a prophetic word given through Kim Clement a number of years ago, to which it was very clear God was going to deliver the people of Iran, but it would not be through men doing it. It would be an act of God doing it. So Trump is, yes, being used as a vessel to accomplish what God's will is, but we do not idolize men. This is an act of God here. This is something that God is doing ultimately. So if you really want to think about it, all the people getting upset about Iran, the regime there being taken apart, basically, literally blown to bits, they're getting mad at God. I'm just going to be as bold as to say that they're getting mad at God. They may not realize it, but they're actually getting mad at God because God has allowed the cup of iniquity to reach its fullness, and now it's being poured out. Judgment is being poured out, and that's what we're seeing here. So yes, you are having a worldly government, a worldly military, the U.S. military primarily, going after the Iranian regime, but it's not truly the U.S., spiritually speaking, that is doing this to the Iranian regime. It is God, and it's going to be God that delivers the people of Iran, because when it gets right down to it, there is an underground church there, and God has his divine purposes for why this the regime is going to fall, because there needs to be a harvest of souls bringing them to Christ and the spreading of the gospel, so it can go forth, before the truly the end of the end times, basically. So that's my understanding of it, and that's my conviction on the matter also. So on that note, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning into the Citizen Report. It's always good to be back here with you, and hopefully I'll be back here again with you very soon. And don't forget to subscribe to me on X. I'm at JFilmGuy, JFilmGuy. I need to create a graphic to show all this. And then, of course, for the Citizen Report right here on the Jonathan Shannon YouTube channel. On Rumble, that's kind of the back channel, the backup place to go to, rumble.com, keyword search The Citizen Report. And, of course, for the Citizen Report proper, you can get links by going to the website, thecitizenreport.net. So on that note, like I said, God bless each and every one of you, and I'll see you right back here again next time. Thanks for tuning in tonight, everyone. I'll see you again soon, and good night.